Hi there, I'm Yusuke. I'm an engineer working on aep.dev, and today I wanted to kick off a series of videos about aep.dev, what it is, what kind of tools we have available, and what we're trying to build. So today, it's just kind of an intro to aep.dev. So first off, what does AEP stand for? Well, it's an acronym for API Extension Proposals. It's an API specification and tooling ecosystem. And it's a fork of this other project from Google called aep.dev that was primarily focused around API design guidance, primarily for protobuf, and commonly most people refer to google.aip.dev when they talk about aip.dev, which speaks to Google's own API design guidance for their APIs. We are a group of enthusiasts with decades of API experience behind us from companies like Microsoft, IBM, Cruise, Google, Roblox, Buff, and Algoric as well. And if you're interested, you can go ahead and check out aep.dev or github.com/aep.dev. So what are our goals with the APs? So as I mentioned previously, what we're trying to do is build an API specification and a client ecosystem. And so one of the first things we're trying to do is produce a set of design patterns that really captures the best practices in resource-oriented design. Um, we have decades of experience behind us. We are kind of trying to codify them into a specification. Once we have that, we encode that knowledge into specifications that could apply to multiple different protocols, but we're targeting gRPC and HTTP plus JSON represented via OpenAPI specifications for now. Once we have that specification, we are building an ecosystem of clients that understand sort of the semantics of that specification and code generate based upon those. So we're talking about services, clients, CLIs, potentially declarative tools like Terraform and API documentation generators as well. So why AEPs? Why produce this project? So um, with a lot of our experience, those of us who are working on the project right now have kind of realized that an API design guide gets you a pretty good far of the way in terms of improving the user experience, but a specification really kind of enables a much larger ecosystem. So there are best practices around REST. Maybe there's slightly different flavors, and so having a specification that has a consistent way to express that is valuable. But there's also these higher order patterns that we could codify as well. Things like long running operations. What do you do if an individual request takes longer than 10 minutes or something like that, the reasonable amount of time for an HTTP request, and you need to have a pattern around how you basically initiate that request and maybe pull for that result afterwards. Things like singletons and revisions of resources are patterns that are built on top of REST that if there was a specification, clients could code against that and make richer experiences for their users. In addition, that consistency helps really reduce a lot of the complexity of these clients themselves. SDKs, CLIs often have individual workarounds around them because APIs are slightly different. Things like eventual consistency can result in the need for retries or sleeps on a per API basis. Sometimes there's different naming and path structure for these CRUD operations. And each of those inconsistencies results in often some amount of manual effort. And if we are able to make the specification and make these APIs more uniform, we can reduce the cost of the clients as well. So this is a good segue. I'll pause on this slide. And what I really want to talk about here is the site and sort of the ecosystem we plan on building. So this is aep.dev. Here's the homepage. And you'll see here we can kind of explore the AEPs and see what types of guidance exists today. So on the left-hand side, you'll see that we have a lot about specifically how resources work, how they're expressed in APIs, what sort of pathing structure we expect from resources, how they represent relationships between child and parents in HTTP and protobuf slash gRPC APIs. We talk about the standard methods that are associated, the create, get, update, delete, list methods, specific specifications around their behavior. Um, and so there's a lot of guidance in here that actually allows you to build an AEP compliant API. And I want to show this next slide here. This is kind of a map of the ecosystem that we are working on building today. So the fundamental unit of AEP is these resource definitions, this ability to express, which resources are exposed on an API, what the relationships are with each other. And if we have a pretty simple resource definition, which we'll dive into in future videos, we are also able to build things like a service hub that understands these resources, are able to auto-generate, create, get, update, delete APIs, potentially build them out into both protobuf and HTTP variants, generate open API schemas for them, and potentially maybe in the future we can look at things like GraphQL. This is partially a representation of today's ecosystem and also partially where we want to get. But for simplicity, today we are producing a protobuf API and then effectively using gRPC gateway to give us REST APIs. And from those REST APIs, we have an experimental Terraform provider that's fully code generated. We're going to work on a CLI that easily will operate with any API that adheres to the AEP best practices. In the future, we're looking at how to easily build Kubernetes operators, and we can enable much larger ecosystem like LLMs plugins, as well as asset inventories to go find, audit your resources as well. We're also thinking about SDKs, API documentation, and probably some sort of interactive UI or website that will allow you to basically go visualize these resources, easily filter them, discover what you're looking for. So that's the vision of the ecosystem we're trying to build. And I wanted to touch on a very specific topic that comes up a lot, AEPs and AIPs. What's the difference, right? So I think a lot of people are familiar with AIPs and what those are. And again, I think, one of the major philosophical differences is we're talking about building an API specification versus design guidance. Design guidance is something that you can potentially ignore a lot of the rules, maybe just choose the ones that are important to you. Maybe keep quite a few of your own choices because of difficulty with backwards incompatibility. But with that level of inconsistency, it's really hard to kind of build these clients, and it's really hard to allow richer experiences. And so with AEPs, we really want to build a specification, taking a lot of the design guidance that from the AIPs, but applying them in a little bit more rigorous of a fashion. The other thing that we focus a lot on with AEPs is we're really trying to build a tooling ecosystem and not just the design itself. So AIPs do have linters that are associated with them. There are implicit clients that adhere to them, like the GAPIC libraries that are open source and produced by Google, but those aren't sort of official clients that are designed to interoperate with all AIP adherent APIs. While what we're trying to build with AEPs is really take that extra step and build that whole ecosystem. One of the other major differences long term is we are trying to extend into HTTP plus JSON because the reality is that REST and HTTP are the common language, at least externally, for the internet and web services. And so really not considering HTTP and JSON APIs as part of your API design guidance is a huge gap. Something that will probably make it very difficult for many companies to adopt. And so we're really looking at a world where our tools can apply and benefit for both types of protocols as well. So I hope that was helpful as a general overview. And I think what I would like to close on this is in the next part of the series, we're going to talk a lot about the clients that we've already built and have some wonderful demos for those. But we really also want people to get involved. So we need help across the board, whether you're interested in building one of these clients, whether you want to improve our generators for the services themselves, whether you're interested in improving API design guidance, or you just want to contribute, we have all sorts of help that we would love to have. So if you want to get engaged, here's a few quick notes. These are subject to change, but come join us in our AEP Slack channel in CNCF Slack, or go to our README and learn and connect. Look at the issues, look at sort of maybe some of the PRs, and feel free to ask us questions in the Slack channel. All right. Well, thank you very much. I hope this kicked off serious. And again, next video, we're going to talk actually a little bit more about that resource definition and our code generator APC. Thank you.